get the opportunity now to begin to consolidate on everything that we've been speaking about, hearing. The purpose of today was not to necessarily give answers, but to give the raw material for deep contemplation, which hopefully inspires not just action, but a different type of action moving forward from all of us. But of course, for us to be able to arrive at what that different type of action looks like, it's important that we start to take everything that we have heard today and arrive at a place of so what and now what. So what does this mean? Or what do we make of this? And what does it mean? What are the implications for what we go and make out in the world? And so I'm going to need your help on this one, because a lot of the speaking we hope will be done by you, but we do have time constraints, so it will be done with great efficiency, and then I will be supported by Andy and Jonathan as well. And so let me get into it. So what we're going to be speaking about here is the architecture of redemptive imagination. So if we can go to that slide, is the architecture of redemptive imagination. We have understood the complexity and the challenges that we need to grapple with. We have lamented. We have understood the types of leaders that we need to be if we are going to undertake or successfully effect redemptive change. Now, what is the architecture of the type of imagination that we need to bring forth? We spoke about creativity as a critical success factor. What's the architecture of that creative or redemptive imagination? And I'll be using as a framework this quote, which is not by Andy, but it is made famous to me by Andy. And it says, "Culture is what you make of the world in both senses." Culture is what you make of the world in both senses. And what that means is, if you kind of look at it just a little bit closer, is culture, what your culture is, what your culture reflects, is exemplified by what you make of the world, how you make sense of how the world is. But your culture is also reflected by what you then go and make in the world. So we can speak about our values and we can speak about what our culture is in glowing terms, but ultimately the true test and the true indicator of our culture is what we make of the world, how we go about making sense of the world as we see it, and then what we then proceed to go and make in the world. And just moving on to the next slide, what Andy then offers, and these are his words, is that culture is the sum of meaning making and material making. It is the sum of our ability to make meaning of what we're seeing in the world, and then to go out and make material, active material, tangible material out in the world that seeks to transform culture. And what ultimately that then translates into is, it translates into an altered patterns of behavior, altered patterns of outcomes out in the world. So the things that we all make every single day, the things that we do every single day, perpetuate existing patterns of outcomes in the world, or they disrupt them, or they create new patterns of reality. The reason why the world is as it is because there's a critical mass of people who go out into the world every day and do the types of things that keep the world as it is. And so when we go out and we material make as a redemptive action, is that we put things into the world that change these patterns of being and behavior so that we a different set or a different patterns of outcomes over the long term. And so what I'd like us to do is the story of and approach this in 3 sections. So I want us to look at you as part of this, what you make of the world and what you make in the world. I'd like us to look at the part about how we make sense of the world, and then we'll look at what we make in the world, what we eventually go and make in the world. And I'd like us to lean on the conversation that I think reveals a lot about the architecture of redemptive imagination. And that story happens around the burning bush between God and Moses. And God outlines his redemptive imagination for his people who are in Egypt. And if we go to the next slide, it starts off with Moses looking after his father-in-law's sheep. He's a fugitive. He's run away. He is now looking after his father-in-law's sheep. And all of a sudden, out there, he sees a burning bush. And then God cries out to him and says, "Moses, Moses." And Moses responds and says, "Here I am." So it strikes me that the first part of our redemptive imagination is the response of "Here I am," but is also an awareness of "Where am I?" So it's "Here I am," but it's also "Here I am." I am mindful of where I am. And so the first thing is for us to undertake redemptive mission and to actualize redemptive imagination, it requires you. And it requires you to be present, and it requires you to be available for the redemptive mission. Because what we see in Exodus 3 is God is partnering with Moses to undertake a redemptive mission. And so, first it requires that you are there, that you are present. And the reflections for us is, are you present? Are you available for redemptive mission? Are you really available and present for redemptive mission? The next part is then God says to him, "Take your sandals off your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground." And in the culture of that time, taking the sandals off your feet is an act of absolute humility. And so the first thing that then is demanded of us when we say we're available is, are we in a state of humility and submission? In a state of appropriate and adequate humility and submission for God to use us as He wills? Or are we still caught up in reinforcing the story of our own lives and what we're doing? No, wait a minute, God, I'm still busy looking after these sheep. God, it's a little bit of an inconvenient time, I've got competing demands for my time. God, I hear what you're asking me, but could we maybe amend what you're asking, because This is really, you're asking me to go back to a place where I'm a fugitive, to a place that raised me. They saved me. These people took me out of a river and they looked after me as if I was one of their own. You're asking me to go there? Wait a minute, God, it's inconvenient. The first thing God says is take off your sandals, because that is first the humility, and one of the ways in which I've enjoyed understanding the concept of humility is that the word human, what we all are, derives from the word humus, which means soil. But the word humility also derives from humus, which means soil. And the word humiliation also derives from humus, which means soil. And humility is a way in which you return to soil so that God can remold you into whatever it is that He needs you to be for the redemptive mission. I can't use you in this state, and I need you to return to the soil so that I can mold you into what I need you to become. And if you're anything like me, you forego the humility, and humiliation is always there as well, just to bring you back to soil, because God really needs to use you. And so the first thing is humility. And this interesting thing that God doesn't say, step over here, because where I am, where this bush is burning is holy ground. Says, there where you stand. That company that you're in, that sector that you're in, that community that you're in, because of my presence as God there, you stand on holy ground. You stand on sanctified ground. You stand on set-apart ground, not because the ground is inherently sanctified, but because you stand on it. And so culture is what you make of the world in both senses. But this first part is, the critical part is that it's you. It starts with you. And so the first reflection I'd like us to do is to reflect on these three questions. And what I'd like to ask you to do, please, is if you can write, we need your help. One of the things we're wanting to do after this is to consolidate all of the reflections coming out of this, so that we can produce something afterwards that helps us on our journey moving forward collectively. So if you can write on a blank piece of paper, so you've got the notebooks in front of you. So on the one, reflect on these for a few minutes. Write down what your main reflection is on that one piece of paper. You don't have to put your name on it. We're going to collect it. Have a conversation. Have a brief conversation around on your table about what is the main reflection that's coming to you. And then I'm going to ask that Andy, and then we'll ask one or two of you to maybe share, and then we'll have a little bit of dialogue before we move on to the next session. Thank you. So you don't necessarily have to answer all 3 questions. Those are just to prompt your reflection. You can just have one key reflection and then just have a brief conversation at your table, and then we will move on. All right. Let's see, is there anyone who would like to share whatever's come to their hearts, minds, quickly? Anyone? No one? There we go. Simon.
Thank you so much for challenging us. Today, for me, has been a great time of inspiration and also a reminder that God sees and God knows. At times, we can be overwhelmed by what is happening in our world today and forget that we have a bigger God. So in response to the first question, there was not enough time to get to others. I feel and sense that hope is rekindled in me. My takeaway is hope again. And then coming here, it was the question of where are we as a nation? And I feel and sense that hope is rekindled. Hope again. I feel like I'm in a place to hear what God is saying about the next assignment for me personally in stepping into this redemptive leadership.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Pastor Simon. There's a hand there from Nati.
I feel like I'm cheating a little bit because I've been on this journey, as you heard from my sharing earlier. So I've, for a while now, I felt like, in fact, the analogy that I use is that of Moses before the burning bush. So yes, that's I'm right there near. And yes, I'm in that place of heart and mind and submission, and that's the framework that I believe it's going to take for us to be able to do and tap into this supernatural power that allows us to do the impossible at impossible speed, the rootedness and belonging in God, our identity being founded in God. In Colossians chapter 3, it says, "For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God." Our connection to anything else has been severed, as it were, and we are now hidden with Christ in God. We belong to God's kingdom, and that's what enables us to do the impossible. Does the scale of complexity and personal risk that the redemptive mission demands of you intimidate you, and why? What of value to you is at stake for you, if anything at all? My answer to that is everything is at stake and has been at stake for a while. I've lost friends, reputation completely destroyed unfairly by others as I've stood for truth. I have almost died, and my kid almost died. It just goes on. It's unbelievably risky, and yet I'm still standing, and only because, again, you can't say you can do it. You won't be able to do it unless the help that God provides. And for me, when you read on in chapter 19 of 1 Kings, God then provides for Elijah. He talks about 2 kings that he was going to go and appoint, and then Elisha, who was going to be his servant. And all those people represent different categories of provision and support that is needed along the journey. Protection, the kings were going to do that, but I also see them as providing geographical kind of open gates, of favor in certain geographical regions. But also someone to just hold up your arms as a close personal support in terms of friends. It's everything is at stake.
Thank you.
And God is like, I need you to focus on this. I need you to go for it, and that's a decision I've made. And it's hope resurrected in action.
Thank you so much. That last question is inspired. Thank you for both of those shares. Inspired by the fact that after God has laid out the redemptive mission, or articulated it, the first thing that Moses says is not, "Oh, that's amazing. To partner with the Almighty God on this just sounds exciting." It's trepidation. It's what if. It's wait a minute. And I wonder whether we can claim to be doing anything redemptive if it doesn't scare us, because it is taking us beyond the realm of reasonable towards unreasonable. So who wants to be unreasonable? Can we say that we are undertaking redemptive mission if it feels unreasonable and comfortable? I'm going to move on because of time. Please, if you can come in through in the next. I still I'd really love to get Andy's and Jonathan's voice in on this, but I just want to let me wrap, and then we can then have, hopefully. Culture is what you make of the world in both senses. We've just spoken about the you element of it. Now let's speak about how you make meaning, how you make sense of what it is that you see in the world. So in the same conversation, the burning bush conversation, if we move on to the next slide, is God starts with, "I have surely seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt." It does not start with an action plan. It does not start with the land of milk and honey. It does not start. It starts with God saying, "I have seen my people who are in Egypt." Interestingly, he also doesn't say, "I have seen the oppressed Israelites in Egypt." He does not conflate their conditions with who they are. Who they are is they are my people. What their circumstances are is that they are being oppressed. And so redemptive imagination then starts and has at its heart the people, and an ability to see God's people as God sees them, not as Circumstances have labeled them, not as politicians describe them, not as statisticians classify them, but as God sees them. Do we have the ability to see these people, the forgotten people, as God sees them? That's where God starts, is I have seen my people who are, I've seen the oppression of my people who are in Egypt. The next one, it just focuses us on the fact that God says, I have seen the oppression. So it's the same line, but it's, I have seen the oppression. Redemptive imagination requires you to see the oppression, to see it past your exhaustion with these types of conversations, to see it past your frustration of how long we've been talking about these things, to see past what your political sensibilities are, and to see the oppression. Are you seeing the oppression? We often, in probably an attempt, it almost becomes an escapism, is let's not worry about the oppression. Let's just think about what we're going to do about it. And as Jonathan was saying, as part of that Philemon teaching, is the understanding and the acknowledgement of the material harm. To look at it in the face, even if we might be culpable in its perpetuation. God does not start with an action plan. In fact, it strikes me that what God is busy doing here, before he even says what he's going to do, he is articulating a lament. If God Almighty can shape his redemptive imagination by starting with lament, who are we? And so it comes back to what Andy was saying when saying that lament is the critical precursor to creative, redemptive imagination. God himself first laments, I have seen my people and I have seen the oppression. I haven't just seen the oppression and I haven't just seen both. And then on the next slide it says, and I've heard their cry because of their taskmasters. If we can go to the next slide. So I haven't just seen the oppression. I have identified who and what causes it, and who and what drives its persistence. How bold are we to call these things and to identify them and to say that this oppression, it's one thing to be able to point at the oppression, but have we done a decent enough job to point at what it is that causes this oppression to persist? Why is it that this pattern of outcomes persists? And are we bold enough to do so when the finger potentially points at people that are close to us, communities that are close to us, areas that we have vested interests in, sectors that our pensions are invested in? Are we able to have a clear-eyed view and say, but that's what's causing it? Or God does. And then finally he says in the next slide, for I know their sorrow. I have seen, I have heard, but I also know. I know their sorrow. You have seen and you have heard, but do you know their sorrow? You have conducted focus group meetings. You have read the statistics. Every time you fly into Cape Town, you see. But have you known? This is God shaping his redemptive imagination. So when we move to the next slide, a picture that we are all familiar with in South Africa, that is a particular pattern. That pattern did not come about by accident. That pattern did not originate yesterday. It persists. And the question to us is, what do we make of the world? What do we make of a South Africa that not only continues to produce this pattern, but continues to drive its persistence? What do you make of it? What do you make of it? What do you make of it? What is it that you make of this pattern? Is it tolerable for you? Is it not tolerable? Is it just the way things are? Does it deserve for you to drop everything that you are doing and to confront it? Is it worthy of you changing particular patterns of behavior? Is it worthy of you changing your business model? Or is it something you can live with? What do you make of this? So we move on to the next set of reflective questions. Just to be clear once again, the idea is not that you answer each and every one of them. It's that you look at each one of them and you use them to reflect, and then you just write down just one key reflection from having thought about and contemplated on these questions, please. Of course, after this, you can then go ahead and answer them individually.